We're Richard and Jaci Mun-Gavin, and we are so grateful that you have taken the time to invest in your parenting journey.
We believe in parenting with purpose and with vision for your children, and so we hope you find this session helpful. This is our final session together, and we're going to be speaking a little bit about discipline. So obviously we are not wanting to over-discipline our children, and yet sometimes it is necessary. Our kids are still in training. This is not a pride issue. We don't discipline them because we're embarrassed or because they've made us look like fools. We understand that our kids they may misbehave, and it doesn't mean that we've failed. It just means that we're not yet finished with our children.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was such a valuable lesson, certainly for me, but I think for both of us, was when we realized that our children are actually separate people. And yes, there is a degree to which they reflect on us enough as a family, as a culture and stuff, but we are training children in the way they should go. And so if we can view them as not us, then I think it's really helpful in being able to let something of how they behave not kind of trigger our pride and our ego.
Absolutely.
And all of that. And so it's a really valuable lesson that I know was so helpful for me because I would be inclined to discipline based on what people thought of me because of it, as opposed to actually just helping our children grow up into the ways of the Lord.
You might wonder, at what age can I expect obedience from my child? And that's a great question. So studies have shown that between the age of 10 and 12 months, the child is learning the ability to understand that they are under your authority and that they need to obey, they are able to obey. And so actually, and even generations ago, I read something from, I think it was Susanna Wesley. Centuries ago, and she would say she expected obedience from her children by age 1, and so that is you might go, what? But actually, if you start there, if you start with expecting obedience from age 1, it really will set you up for success.
Absolutely.
And at what age do you expect it to finish? Well, never, but you expect obedience to move to whoever is the body of authority over your child. So you've taught them obedience to authority, and then you transfer your authority to them, and they need to make decisions for themselves, and then they need to obey themselves, and that's called self-control.
So I think one of the key questions that comes around this, that we've been asked a lot, but also that we asked a lot when we were learning in our parenting, is discipline methods. How do we, or should we, discipline our children? Given the fact that there's laws of the country, there's what the scriptures teach, what do we have at our disposal? How should we be doing this?
In our studies of the scripture, Richard and I, as we were trying to decide this for ourselves, we found that the scripture, I don't think, prescribes a way of discipline, a method of discipline, but rather it says that we shouldn't withhold discipline from those we love.
Yes.
That God disciplines those he loves, it says, and also that wise parents and parents who love their children don't withhold discipline from them. So it's about making sure that we do discipline them. But if we look through the sweep of history, God disciplines his children in different ways, different methods, different times. Sometimes his discipline is quite strong, other times it's far more gentle, sometimes it's quick, it's immediate, and other times he gives a person time to change. And so as parents, we need to have the wisdom as well to read our children, always understanding what our end goal is, always keeping our vision in mind, where we're trying to move our children to, and therefore employing the best discipline method and timing that we feel will help this child towards obedience and towards obeying the laws of God.
So in our discipline methods, we'll talk around some of those things, but there's some guiding principles that we follow which will determine what method we use in what circumstance. And so we just want to spend a bit of time talking about the 3 things that we kind of have as a framework for the discipline of our kids. So why don't you kick us off with the first one, just looking at what is effective.
So discipline has to be effective. So for that, we would say we want to, whatever we've disciplined our children with, we want it to affect change.
Yes.
We want them to want to not do that again. That is the idea. And so if we are disciplining our children and they run straight back out and do exactly the same thing, then probably we've missed the mark and they needed a little bit more discipline, something stronger, something that was more their language. if they would have changed at a far gentler rebuke, then we shouldn't have been so harsh.
Absolutely.
So the Bible also says that a wise man responds to a gentle rebuke.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be over disciplining our children. We want the least amount that will affect change.
Two of our children I'll use as an example could do exactly the same thing. One being our second daughter, who is incredibly tender in her soul, and she hates to displease anybody. She loves to be obedient. That's her makeup. And so when she has done something which requires discipline of some sort, we can be sitting around the dining room table. She absolutely loves both Jax and me, but adores her daddy. And if I raise my eyebrows at her, that is discipline enough for her. Her heart melts. She knows what she's done. She will affect change.
Yeah.
My eldest boy can do exactly the same thing, but he is at an age and a stage in life where he's starting to test some boundaries. He's trying to see where he fits in this picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he could do exactly the same thing as my daughter. I could raise my eyebrows at him, and he would raise his eyebrows back at me. And he's trying to just flex his muscles, and sometimes it can be downright rude, but most of the time it's just he's trying to find the new boundaries, and we want to set him up for success, but the discipline required would be a little bit heavier in order for him to respond. Again, trying to use the least discipline possible to affect change. And so that's what we want to look for in this.
Yeah. And then the second point, so discipline needs to be effective. It also needs to be expected. Yeah. Discipline should not surprise our children. Yes. We're not looking to catch them off guard and suddenly heap a punishment on them. It shouldn't shock them. It should be something that they knew was coming because they've been prepped. They know what's expected of them, and so therefore they know when they've fallen short. They should know that. We should, whatever situation they're going into, if it's going to be something that you'll discipline for and it's something new, they really need to know this is what's expected of you when we walk into this situation. This is how I expect you to greet people. They need to be prepped beforehand so that they understand, I've done something wrong. And
so I think an example that was certainly revealing to me was we were going to church one Sunday, and we were all getting dressed, and we said, okay kids, time to go. And one of our children said, where are we going? Not knowing that it was Sunday, not knowing that it was
they were young.
Time to go to church, didn't understand that, and yet there's this reality that we hadn't set him up for success because we hadn't prepped him of what we were doing. And so in that moment, there was this, we could have kind of lost it a little bit and kind of got, you know that we're going to church, and come on, you should have got ready. And he could have lived under the weight of our frustration when we didn't set him up for success. And so I think part of this in terms of expected is to give warning of our expectation of them. And so another example is when it is coming up to bedtime. Often our kids don't know how to read the time, exactly. So they may know that bedtime is 7 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. They don't know how to tell that, and so we can't get frustrated with them for not being ready for bed, but we can help them. We can help them be ready and expected so that they can move towards obedience and fulfilling what is expected.
Good. So 3 Ds we have in our home would be if we would discipline for disobedience, dishonoring people, or disrespecting property. So disobedience, dishonoring people, and disrespecting property. And for those things, we would normally administer discipline. The reason being is for all 3 of those things, our kids would know that you have let us down, you have missed the mark in this. And so for those things, we would normally administer some sort of discipline. But then there would also be situations where there would just be natural law consequences. You've lost something and now you don't have it anymore. Or you've broken something of somebody else's and now you need to give them yours. So things like that, which would be natural consequences. Understanding that as parents, our children will one day be in a real world with real laws, with real consequences for their behavior. And so we don't want them to end up losing their friends, being expelled from school, getting thrown into jail, not holding down their jobs, losing their marriages. And so there are real consequences coming, some of which are really hectic. And we're wanting to either expose them at a lower degree to some of those consequences, like having to fork out money if they've lost something, or we're wanting to, if that's not possible, that's the best. The best is if it's that natural consequence, but at a level that is reasonable for them to cope without breaking them. We're not going to throw them in jail because they stole something from us. We're going to do something else that's lesser, or a separate form of discipline if it's within those three areas.
Yeah, I think another element to expected under this category for discipline would be that it's never given in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
I think in the heat of the moment, we would all probably have to agree, if we're honest with each other, is it can lend towards abuse.
Aggressive, over-disciplining.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we always want to discipline for a positive outcome, not discipline for a negative event. And so the heat of the moment, we would really recommend that no discipline takes place in the heat of the moment. Having said that, we know that can be really challenging as a parent.
And I think that's okay. We will fall short. I know that shaken baby syndrome is a thing because people do it. Like, people are growing up on the job in parenting. So no guilt here. And yet we can still hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think that we can do that. I think that we can say, this is what I've done in the past, and this is how I may fail again in the future. And yet it's not okay. It's not okay to be an absolute ruler and to just discipline my children because I'm the boss and I said so. It's not okay. And even if we've done it, we don't neglect our authority. We take it back. We remember that we're still authorized. Even though we've messed up, we don't get to say, I'm sorry, I'm bad at this. We take it back and we learn and we deal with our own issues, seek help if we need to, so that we can do our job well, because God doesn't take it away from us except under extreme circumstances. And so we need to learn on the job. Yeah.
Another aspect just under expected is, again, I think the overarching thing of parenting is we're wanting to train a child in the way they should go. We're wanting to help them become all that they should be, and therefore using discipline as a teaching moment so that they can help them understand. Sometimes in the moment they may be too emotional, they may be whatever it may be, and discipline is either administered or a natural consequence, but really try and take the time at some point, find the time where there can be an emotional connection and there can be a teaching moment to help your children know what is expected of them, whether it be of your parenting, in your family, or as what it means to be a child of God or growing into society, a human being.
And I think we mentioned this in discipline because it goes together with that atmosphere of love. We spoke about observant parenting and taking a moment to that whale story and not harpooning the whale when there's that moment of vulnerability. And it often happens that after a child has been disciplined, that they feel disappointed, they're maybe angry at first, and then there's a moment of feeling a little bit sad. That's the moment when we want to come in. Once the anger is dissipated and once they're feeling a little bit sad and disappointed in themselves, we want to be there in that moment to reconnect emotionally. They go to discipline and love have to balance hand in hand. They're two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that I think helps our children move from compliance to conviction.
Exactly.
We're always wanting them we're setting them up to be able to make their own decisions as an adult, where they're not being held to a parent's discipline, but they'll be able to make a call because it's not because we said so, but because they have the conviction of what is right.
Yeah. And then the third point is that discipline must be effective, it must be expected, and then it must be consistent.
Yeah.
And again, this is about vigilant authority. It's about discipline that looks the same. It looks the same in private and in public. So we can't say, I'm in the shopping centre now and my kid is misbehaving, or I'm wherever you are in public. Our kids, particularly when they're young, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be the same. They need to know that you're going to take the effort of getting them up out of the situation and going and finding a place where you can administer whatever discipline you use, so that they know that, okay, what's expected of me at home is expected of me here. So we have to be consistent.
And possibly a thought, if that kind of, maybe you're going through your mind and going, jeepers, I could never do that in a shopping center or whatever. Maybe you are over disciplining at home if you would be too ashamed or embarrassed to do it in public. we got to remember that our children are human beings and they are God's before they are ours, even though authority has been given to us to parent them. And so maybe just worth a consideration.
Yeah. And then I think we have covered this in the authority one, but to say that around discipline, to give chances can be cruel. We don't want to be cruel to our children. Consistency is kind.
Yes.
It is actually kind. A consistent coach, if you were doing swimming training, the coach that left you off the hook is not actually being kind. And we're training our children to something. And we don't want to let them off the hook around discipline areas. It's just, as I said, different when it's not a matter of right and wrong. There's bundles of grace because we're all under the same law, but yet it's consistent, and that's important.
Yeah, so I think as we maybe just summarize discipline, I think again we got to understand we're training our children the way they should go. We want to see them flourish. We want to set them up for success. We shouldn't be looking to discipline our kids, but that is a responsibility that we have to train them in the way they should go. And so the least discipline that you are able to administer for change is what we're looking after. And so that is what is effective. We want to see what is we want to be consistent in that. And so we would really just encourage you to even have a conversation as parents around your disciplining methods and what you will discipline for and how you'll do it according to some of the things that maybe we've put on the table here today.
We're coming to an end. This is our last session together, and so we just wanted to do a quick recap over the last 7 sessions, that we're remembering that we've come to this point, and I want to reassure you, God is a perfect Father. And he still has a lot of rebellious children. He has a lot of children that he cannot predetermine the outcome of their lives. And I just want to take that pressure off of you with that comment that we cannot predetermine the outcome of our children's lives. So we can do the very best that we can for them. But at the end of the day, unless we're being controlling and we're overstepping boundaries and we're overstepping into areas that are really not our control because they belong to that child as an individual, as a person, then we need to feel free, that we need to do our best job possible, that we have purpose, that we have vision for our children. But at the end of the day, they need to decide to step into this as well. They need to decide to choose to develop the habit and the disposition of obedience and to follow through with the discipline that you've given them. And that, so our 3 points in the beginning, where we had our targets, where we want them to reflect the image of God. Yes. We want to raise our children to rule the earth together in community. We want to reflect the image of God as well in our parenting. Absolutely. We want that to be one of the purposes of our parenting, is that it would look beautiful, it would remind people of what God is like for them, that we would be representatives of him on this earth. And that there would be releasing redemption, that all of our lives, but even as we raise our kids, that we would raise them to be releases of the redemptive plan of God on the earth. Yeah, and the tools that we have in our hand is we have love. We're able to be present, observant, and available to our children, that we want to create an atmosphere of love and generous beauty in our homes for them to be a part of. Atmosphere is key. If we want to, we can use that to lead our children because we don't have the right to control them. There's mutual respect, where we respect their humanity. They are not our possessions. Good. Yeah. And that our authority is imputed, that it is authorized, it's authoritative, that we are not autocratic leaders, we are not absolute rulers that can say off with his head whenever we want. We don't get to change the rules. And then another tool is just that we would use discipline consistently and kindly where necessary. And I think just to close off, children are always asking 2 questions. Do you love me? And can I do whatever I want? And we need to make sure that the answer to the first question is always yes. I love you. No matter what you've done, no matter what is going on, we love you. Yes. And no, you can't do whatever you want, because you don't belong to yourself either. You don't belong to me, but we belong together to each other. We are mutually submitted. Yes. There is mutual respect. And together we belong to God. And that is our higher calling. That is our higher calling. And that is the higher calling that we can put in front of our children to inspire them to choose to be the people that we can't force them to be. Yeah.
So we want to thank you for going on this journey with us. Thank you for investing in your parenting. We trust that these 7 weeks have been helpful, just as we put some of the things that we've learned but with God, and some of the things that we've learned from other people as we've just put it before you. Yes. And we trust that, again, you would have some conversations, you would engage in this process. And we look forward to meeting you and your children one day. And so thank you for allowing us this opportunity and this privilege to speak with you.